Hello, friends. Welcome to End Times Analysis. This is Pastor Jeff. Get a cup of coffee, have a seat, and let us reason together. We are still discussing Ezekiel 38:9, and I like to read it. I'm reading out of the King James. Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands and many people with thee. Last night when we were talking, we were where we finished. We were talking about why I didn't think Vladimir Putin was Gog. Now we just found out today that the leader of the Wagner Group, Prigozhin, has died in a plane accident. And many people are automatically saying this is something that a Gog type figure would do. And yes, he would. But once again, once this individual was taken care of, you did not see a massive rush to the front lines of Ukraine. You didn't see a massive offensive in these areas all over. You did not see deep penetration, flanking movements. You did not see a going after Kiev with everything they have. And they could destroy Kiev. Russia could destroy Kiev, even with conventional. That did not happen. That is something Gog would do. He basically he levels a playing field. He completely takes everything out, and so that way he doesn't have to worry about anything coming up behind him. He doesn't have to worry about the enemies in front. Doesn't have to worry about an insurgency behind. That is something Gog would do. Now, if you look at this, let's look at the Tsar. All the czars before them pretty much had a strategy. It was a Russian steamroller. We have more men than you have bullets. Now that worked really well until machine guns, until very large artillery, until things of that nature came in that it just decimated the Russian line, the Russian steamroller. We have more men than you have bullets. We also have more territory. We will back up. We will do scorched earth. We will destroy everything. So when you come in, you're going to have to rely on your logistics, your wagon trains, your logistic trains to bring troops in. Just ask Napoleon, ask Adolf Hitler, ask the Swedes before that, ask the Teutonic Knights what they went before those. And as they come in, we're going to be able to cut your supply lines. Napoleon was right. An army travels on its stomach. During World War I, we discussed that. This problem happened because the Tsar was forced or was pressured by his Western allies to do offensives that were really against the Russian national interests, against the Germans, against the Austrians, even against the Turks, who were being supplied by Germany and Austria at the time, in order to sap away German manpower from the Western Front. So that was the Russian strategy for hundreds of years, to bring them in, to extend their supply lines, then cut the supply lines. I do not know which Russian writer said this. I'm thinking I don't know about him. I wasn't told a story. I don't know. He said when was talking about when Napoleon invaded Russia, they put down the sword and picked up the club, which means they were going into guerrilla warfare. The Russian steamroller, the Russian scorched earth. Putin, once again, if you look at so far, we have to go with is what he's already done. What has he done in Syria? What has he done in the Ukraine? You see a very cautious, a very grinding away. Even yes, I will say he allowed a general to destroy Eliopil. They have the butcher of Syria. He has allowed these things, but it has not been on a huge whole scale. He has not come in and taken over. He has worked with the Syrian government. He's worked with Israel. He's worked with the United States. I would like you to remember one time, I think we talked about this last night, where a Russian jet strayed into Turkish airspace. It was shot down. A bunch of insurgents came and pulled the pilot out and killed him. Now, think about if that would have happened to an American, a British, French, what the reaction would be. Putin, yes, he was upset. Yes, he protested, but he worked with Egeron. They worked it out. Russian jets after that became armed, but it was toned down. It wasn't blown up into a major issue. Yes, I think he had his tourists boycott Turkey, but it was toned down. A Gog would have blown that up into a major issue, used a hammer to beat your opponents. That is not what Putin did. Now, Stalin is more like what we would call a Magog than anyone. His conduct of war, forcing troops to stay there in almost undefensible areas, having his NKVD or the KGB, we would call today, behind it. So if any troops came by, they would be shot by their own people. Having the KGB go through the ranks and pull out anyone who was spreading defeatism. Ask Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I think he wrote one letter to a friend that was not really that much critical. What do they say? A soldier has a right to complain. Well, not in Stalin's Russia. You did not. It was for Comrade Stalin and the party. That is more like a Gog. That is more like what a Gog would do, going through the ranks. Anyone out who doesn't believe in the cause is out. We will put you away. We will make things happen. This is what we must realize and must have a mentality about who we think God is. Stalingrad, a huge amount of ground forces was sacrificed. Matter of fact, we still don't know the correct number of Russian soldiers who were killed in the Battle of Stalingrad, Volgograd. The tactics and the strategy of offense versus defense. The Russians under Stalin were, once Stalingrad was over, there was a total push all the time, a constant pressure on the Wehrmacht, on the SS divisions who were there. Going in, they did not mind losing mass quantities because Stalin controlled the press. No one really knew how many men were being lost. And the men who were being lost went all the way to Berlin. I mean, the Stalin army, the Red Army, lost amazing numbers of men and were still able to continue the offensive. That's why many people think Stalin, when during the Cold War, didn't push for a hot war. He had Yugoslavia. Tito, of all people, said he wasn't going to follow. Now, Stalin, maybe if he would not have lost so many men, he might have went in and got. He might have wanted to go in, and his general said, "We just don't have enough people." When things were going on in East Germany, when things were going on in other countries where there could have been issues of flare-ups, Stalin worked with the Allies as much as possible. Even in East and West Germany, there was still some level of Allied feeling where both sides were trying to work with each other until the Berlin crisis, where the Berlin airlift had to come in. And then many people think that was the start of the Cold War. So the tactics of offense and defense, of course, there was nuclear weapons to be had, but still, what are we looking at when we're looking for that Gog type character? What we're looking at when you're looking at a Russian type of offensive, defensive type war, whether it's Stalin under the Red Army or even now under the Russian army, they have something called a TVD. Remember, we're using the Orthodox alphabet. TVD is an enemy area, so wide strip of land, sea, or airspace, or even now, I guess you would call it space. TVD is a theater of military operations. It's an axis where the enemy's main political, military, and industrial complex are located. So you focus on this axis, and the Gog coalition is focused on the mountains of Israel. This area contains Jerusalem. It's also the heart of Israel. They call it Judea and Samaria. If you look at a map of Israel, you look at the heart of it where it's coming out. That is the mountains of Israel. That is the center part, the mountains of Israel. I think we even said before, if you take the West Bank, there's a certain place in the West Bank where it's only a few, I think about less than 20, 30 miles from that area to the west, to the Mediterranean. You can cut Israel in half. So he is going against the mountains of Israel. And what is the mountains of Israel? Jerusalem. He is going after the political capital, sort of like the United States did under George Bush, where they came up from Kuwait and went on straight to Baghdad to put as much pressure on Baghdad as possible to get as close to Baghdad and then to show the Iraqi army you cannot defend it. And then you saw a wearing away or a almost a desertion of the Iraqi army, even the Republican guards. I think the Fedayeen Saddam were one of the few who actually stayed coherent and stayed in the back and continued the battle until the insurrection, until the guerrilla warfare that came on after we occupied the country. Now, once God can put things back to the 1948 borders, you are going to see what is Israel doing. Israel has one of the best air forces in the world, one of the best trained armies. Why wouldn't you don't really hear about Israel moving their army up, bringing out the Air Force? Even some people say they have nuclear weapons. Why aren't they doing it? Well, God, Russia has nuclear weapons. Mutual assured destruction. Use tactical nukes or nukes on us. We will destroy everything you have. If Israel knows that they're only going after this area, would they be more inclined to say, okay, we cannot go up against this army? It's futile. It'll be total suicide. We're going to pull our military back to where we believe they can be somewhat defensible. They're going after the mountains of Israel. They're going to make a Palestinian state. They're going to try to protect the Dome of the Rock. They're saying that's what they want, and everything else is going to be. So we're going to move our armies to where we believe we can actually hold a defense, even though the mountains would be a better place. Got to remember, if anyone's been in a military in a democracy, the military in a democracy is under the political. So even though a general may not agree with what the politician says, he must obey that politician and pull back the forces to where they say, okay, this is where we're going to go. Now, once again, we don't know. It's not written in the Bible, it says, but what I believe is Gog and his forces are going to be using UN resolutions, which is already out there, that say that Israel should be separated and have a Palestinian state, and of course Israel going back to the 1948 borders. And of course the pretext for the other coalition members would be we are protecting the third most holiest site in Islam, which is the Dome of the Rock. So that is the pretext. When we start, and yes, we finally finished verse 9. When we talk about verse 10, we're going to talk about the real reason. There's always a pretext. This is what we're going to tell the people, and then there's the real reason. Have you ever been in business, ever been in politics, ever been in a group where a bunch of people are trying to get together, come to a consensus? Many times there'll be a pretext. Well, this is what we believe and what we're going to say to the rest of the group. But really, this is what we really want. There's a pretext, and then there's the real reason. So thank you very much for watching this video, my friends. If you found it informative, if you would please hit the subscribe and the like button. Until next time, my friends, Maranatha.